Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Thomas Gass. I'm an Assistant Secretary General in the United Nations, here working on the 29th floor just behind us. And I'm really thrilled and privileged today, here in the digital media zone, to have with me Ms. Kyla Reid. Ms. Kyla Reid is coming from the GSMA association. So you all have your smartphones with you, your mobile, your apps, etc. That is GSMA, but for us it's more of an acronym. Maybe Ms. Reid, Kyla, if I can say, can you tell us what the GSMA does?
Sure, thanks, Thomas. The GSMA is the Global Association of Mobile Phone Operators. Worldwide, we represent over 800 companies and over 4 billion connections. So the purpose of our organization is really to connect people and connect everyone and everything to a better future. And so we work with our mobile operator members, with the development community, and with other people within the mobile ecosystem to ensure that this power of mobile can really be realized by people around the world.
You said you connect people. Interestingly, the Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, always says that the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda are our declaration of interdependence. So it's all about connections. Can you tell us a little bit what GSMA does to contribute to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Sure. So within the GSMA, we have a group called Mobile for Development. And what we do in that group is really focus on how we can leverage mobile technology and its pervasiveness, particularly in developing countries, to reach the last mile and to provide services to what we dub the underserved. So if you think about some of the global challenges we're facing, over 2 billion people don't have access to any formal financial instruments. Mobile money services are now available in over 70 countries with 230 deployments. So that's really driving a leap and driving take-up of new access to financial services for people who were previously unbanked. Equally, we're seeing over 1 billion people who have no access to formal identification. And one of the SDGs 16.9 really focuses on what that gap means. And we're seeing mobile operators working with organizations like UNICEF, other parts of the UN family, to really accelerate and bridge that gap from analog service provision to digital. So we're seeing this sort of enabling platform, which I think is really key across all of the SDGs. And excitingly, we've just launched yesterday an app called SDGs in Action, and that really focuses on trying to build this momentum from grassroots level and from citizens to educate them on what the SDGs are, to encourage them to pick ones that they feel really passionate about and to connect and to take action on those goals. So we're seeing both the contribution of mobile infrastructure, mobile technology, innovation directly impacting across 17 goals, but also this sort of mobilizing and democratizing feature of mobile to encourage people to take part. So
SDGs in action is the application, and the whole idea is to choose a target, I presume, a target, and then to actually implement it. If you would say, if you had to choose 1 or 2 or 3 targets for GSMA, which ones would you choose?
I think we're making a contribution as an industry across so many of the SDGs. My personal favorite is 16.9, and that is the right to identity, because if you think about the sort of cornerstone both for monitoring development gains and for planning for development interventions, knowing who populations are and where they are is really critical. And without that foundational identity, there's a huge risk of people being left behind. So we think that digital and mobile really has a role in enabling that access and driving some of the good governance, accountability, citizen participation, and rights protection that we think is so important.
This morning, the member states of the United Nations adopted the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. It's a milestone for the international community to actually start building common policy on this very crucial and difficult subject of migrants and refugees. How does GSMA relate to the subject of migrants and refugees?
So we've had a program at the GSMA for a number of years that focuses on emergency response and partnering with mobile operators in the humanitarian community on things like early warning systems, on cash disbursements moving into digital, on understanding how big data can be used in the context of humanitarian response. And we have quite a lot of momentum among our members through an initiative called the Humanitarian Connectivity Charter. And that's really a platform for linking the industry with the humanitarian community in the hopes of improving the efficiency and the predictability of assistance. And I think it's really a recognition of the fundamental nature of connectivity for people who are affected by crisis. And I think that's no more acute than for those who are forced to flee their homes. There's the desire to connect is, the most fundamental of human impulses. And I think mobile's really enabling that reunification of families, the accessibility of information, easing the ability to integrate and to navigate in new places. So we're very excited about a number of our members taking a really innovative step in this area by developing new services that reach refugees, that are targeted for people who are forcibly displaced, and helping to build on the power of mobile in those environments.
The idea of connecting and staying connected with one's relatives and with one's social circle, I think that is quite easy to understand. But you mentioned that you're also developing services to help the integration of migrants. Now that is a critical issue, and it was mentioned already in many speeches today here by leaders, how important it is to allow migrants to integrate, whether it's in the labor market or whether it's in the social world. What kind of services are available? What is at the cutting edge in this regard?
So one of the services that we're particularly excited about and that we've profiled on our newly launched refugee resource portal is one offered by Turkcell, who's the market leader in Turkey. And I think they've really recognized that there's this huge appetite and demand among Syrian refugees for mobile services and for data services. And after a lot of market research on what this potential consumer group might need, they developed and launched the first Arabic-speaking call center in the country to service those particular needs. They've also launched an app that helps with real-time voice-to-voice translation so that people on the move can understand what they're hearing and have a more accessible and easy conversation. So that's one example. We also see organizations like Suktel partnering with the American Bar Association on apps that provide legal support and information about rights. So there's a lot of new products and services that we're seeing come into countries that have quite a heavy host burden, looking at how mobile can play a role.
Another subject which is important, which links the subject of migrants and refugees with the SDGs, is the whole issue of remittances and sending money back home. Is the GSMA involved in that in any way?
So we have been working on how mobile plays a role in remittance, and we're going to be releasing some new information quite soon about how mobile can really drive down the cost, increase the affordability and accessibility. And I think that's a really key consideration when we think about both refugees and migrants, is this sort of the money that's being sent home and what that means. So we believe that mobile can make this easier and more effective, and we're looking forward to releasing more details about that soon.
Thank you. That is really an important area, because of course, the intention is for the money to actually reach the families back home, the country back home, and there's an important target that actually aims at reducing the costs of the transmission of the remittances. I'd like to briefly give the possibility also to people here in the room to ask any questions. I don't know if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. Yes, please. I don't know if you have a mic. Otherwise, maybe you can. We have a mic coming around there.
You mentioned 16.9 in the locations.
Can I ask you to sit?
My name is Michael Smolens from .sub. You mentioned 16.9 is very important to you in terms of the location. Are you familiar with what 3 words? There's a site that started about 2 years ago that divided the world into 57 trillion pieces of land, 3 meters by 3 meters, 9 square meters. And each one of them is identified by 3 words. So you take a look at the largest favelas in the world where millions of people are living in 1 or 2 square kilometers, and they don't have addresses. Over half the, so this is the way that everyone on the planet has an actual address of where they live based on 3 words that identify, as opposed to 32 numbers in latitude and longitude. And this is dramatically changing the ability for people to actually know where they are, to deliver medicine, to deliver services. You might take a look at this, especially with all of your mobile operators. It's called What 3 Words?
Thank you for that question. Maybe I just expand a little bit on that question and say, okay, 16.9, the target, is really about legal identity. It's not just about digital identity. So what do you do to actually make that link between, you know, being someone on the internet, being someone in communication, and being someone in the accountability system of a country?
So I think we're seeing mobile operators play a role in all kinds of the different digital identity delivery, but I think specifically with 16.9, we're seeing a lot of traction around mobile-enabled birth registration in countries like Pakistan, in Tanzania, where the rates of birth registration have dramatically increased through mobile-based platforms that are being rolled out. And I think that's an area that our program and the GSMA is really excited about, because we really do see in that instance the potential for very rapid scale. And I think birth registration is so key to the protection of rights, to establishing that very basic legal identification. And so if we can address and more rapidly increase the number of children who are registered quite soon after birth, that will be a great achievement both for the SDGs as well as for broader development planning and interventions.
Thank you. And do I have other questions in the room? Maybe I can, if I don't have any, I'd come back to this issue. I mean, if the Sustainable Development Goals are a social contract between the leaders and the people, then that means that they can only be implemented if the people know about it. So to what extent is the GSMA also involved in just raising awareness about the Sustainable Development Goals and strengthening that accountability relationship between the leaders and the people, be it at the national level or at the local level?
I think it's very true that information is power, and that mobile has this ability to diffuse information in a way that no other medium really does. And I think what we're hoping that this app will achieve is much more awareness and engagement in the SDG process. And so people who connect with a goal, connect with their communities, will have better visibility of how progress is being made and feel more compelled to take part in it and to hold their governments to account.
I'd like to ask you a last question. I always say that any company who has employees also has a responsibility for the SDG 8, about decent work. What do you do to make sure that your own staff in your own companies is on board with this? Is this just are the SDGs just a project for the management, for the communication, let's say, or awareness building, or is it also something that comes down into the companies of your association and in which the staff actually becomes part of the initiative?
I think it's very much something that's in the organization DNA. Last year at Mobile World Congress, we announced our industry purpose, which is connecting everyone and everything to a better future. And I think we really feel that ethos cascading through the organization. So if you look around the room, you'll see a number of my very enthusiastic colleagues holding up little placards with their favorite SDG. And it's become very much not a peripheral sort of nice part of the things that we do, but at very core to the delivery of all of our programs and to our interaction with the 800 mobile operators around the world. So I think we're really seeing momentum around sustainability as being fundamental to good business, and it's something that I think is very much in the DNA of the GSMA as an organization and increasingly being demonstrated by our members around the world.
Great. Thank you, Kyla. Thank you, through you to GSMA for your contribution. And thank you all for listening, for being part of this discussion. And let's all choose our favorite goal and our favorite target and implement it.
Great.
Thank you very
for having
much.
me.
Thanks.